program is a meal service option for schools and school districts in low-income areas and is a key provision of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. CEP allows the nation's highest poverty schools and districts to serve breakfast and lunch at no cost to all enrolled students without the burden of collecting household applications. This alternative saves local educational agencies, or LEAs, time and money by streamlining paperwork and administrative requirements and facilitates low-income children's access to nutritious school meals. Today's community eligibility provision training will focus on current guidance and background information, SFA notification requirements, navigating the eScholar CEP Manager, and other CEP considerations. Let's discuss the current guidance and some background information. There are many guidance materials available for more information on the community eligibility provision. The community eligibility provision Planning and Implementation Guidance Manual, which was released on September 2016, Memo SP 54-2016, Community Eligibility Provision Guidance and Updated Q&As. This memo is also named SFS 16-X128 on the CMP website. This was also released in September of 2016. The Eligibility Manual for School Meals released in July of 2017, and Memo SP 20-2017, Community Eligibility Provision, Annual Notification and Publication Requirements, or SFS 17-46 on the CMP website, which was released in March of 2017. So let's begin by discussing what CEP is. It is a program established by the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act that allows students to receive free meals under the NSLP and SBP programs. While the program operates on a 4-year cycle, schools may opt in or opt out each year. As an alternative to household applications for free and reduced meals, CEP schools cannot process meal applications. There are a few criteria to participate in the CEP program. Prior to being approved to participate in CEP, SFAs must agree to the following: to serve all children free breakfast and lunch, cover cost above reimbursement amounts with non-federal funds. They must agree to not collect or process meal applications. And SFAs, by individual site or clusters of sites, must have an enrollment with at least 40% of the students considered identified students to participate in CEP. Your data point must be as of April 1st of the school year prior to participation. So in essence, for school year 23-24, your data point should be of April 1st, 2023. Also, residential child care institutions, or RCCIs, are not eligible to participate. SFAs must use non-federal funding sources to cover operational costs when the federal reimbursement received under CEP is less than the cost of providing no-cost meals to all students. Non-federal funding sources include, but are not limited to, any portion of state revenue matching funds that exceeds the minimum requirement established in 7 CFR Part 210.17, profits from a la carte sales, cash donations, or in-kind contribution funds from outside sources, such as volunteer services. During the process of determining school eligibility, the term identified students refers to children who are directly certified for free school meals based on their participation or a household member's participation in other means tested assistance programs, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, FDPIR. Identified students are also children who are categorically eligible for free school meals without an application and who are not subject to verification, which includes homeless, runaway, and migrant, children enrolled in a federally funded Head Start program or comparable state-funded Head Start or pre-kindergarten program, or foster children certified through means other than a household application. Please note that children must be considered eligible for one of these categories between the start of the school year and April 1st, keeping in mind that the file that comes out in April will be based on March data. So just to reiterate, all children that fall into the categories listed above are referred to as identified students. So SNAP children and siblings, plus TANF students and siblings, plus homeless, migrant, runaway, and foster, plus Head Start equals identified students. And again, eligibility is determined on April 1st of each year. A few quick points for SFAs to remember in determining school eligibility are: students in the same household with directly certified students, which are SNAP and TANF, can be counted as identified students. SFAs are not able to use information from free and reduced applications to identify students. If an identified student percentage of at least 62.5% is determined, then all meals will be reimbursed at the free rate. If the identified student percentage falls between 40 and 62.5%, then meals will be reimbursed at a combination of both free and paid rates. On this slide, you will find a formula that SFAs should use to determine the identified student percentage. You will divide the number of identified students as of April 1st by the number of enrolled students as of April 1st, and then multiply by 100. I have provided two examples of percentages for you. In example 1, it shows a school that has determined that there are 550 identified students with a total enrollment of 700 students. To find the identified student percentage, or ISP, you would divide the 550 identified students by the enrollment of 700 students, which equals 0.78571429, which rounds to 0.7857. Multiply that by 100 to calculate the ISP of 78.5%, which meets the threshold. The second example shows 279 identified students with a total enrollment of 700 students. Again, you would divide the 279 identified students by the 700 total enrollment students, which will give you 0.39857142 rounded to 0.3985 multiplied by 100 to get an ISP of 39.85%, which does not meet the threshold. Individual schools or group of schools must have an identified student percentage of 40% to be eligible for CEP. For schools participating in CEP, the ISP multiplied by 1.6 equals the percentage of meals claimed at the free rate. The remaining meals served up to 100% are reimbursed at the paid rate. Again, I have provided two examples. In example 1, we will use the ISP from the previous slide of 78.57% multiplied by the CEP multiplier of 1.6, which equals a claiming percentage of 125.71%. And this percentage exceeds 100%. Therefore, all meals can be claimed as free. In example 2, the SFA has an ISP of 46.85%, and we multiply that by the CEP multiplier of 1.6, which equals a claiming percentage of 74.96%. This SFA will claim 74.96% of their meals as free and the remaining 25.04% as paid. All LEAs operating CEP are required to conduct a data match at least once annually, but this is actually recommended to be conducted monthly. Doing this will allow SFAs to, 1, take advantage of ISP increases, and 2, observe demographic trends. But please be mindful that the identified student percentage must be established based on data as of April 1st of the school year prior to CEP election. Now we will discuss the notification requirements. Each year, state agencies must notify LEAs of their district-wide eligibility for CEP and provide the procedures for interested and eligible LEAs to participate by April 15th. State agencies must also collect school-level information by April 15th and post lists of eligible SFAs with an ISP greater than 40% and near eligible SFAs with an ISP lower than 40% but greater than 30%. LEAs and schools on state agency websites and provide FNS the link to these lists by May 1st. The requirements for CEP elections are as follows. CEP elections begin on June 1st, 2023. Each year, all CEP elections must be made by June 30th. All CEP elections will be completed in the Child Nutrition Program website. On this slide, you will find a listing of the CEP deadline dates. It is important to note that all SFAs must confirm the population data in eScholar CEP Manager by April 15th. All SFAs must make final elections regarding CEP participation for the 2022-2023 school year through the CEP system by June 30th. Now we will discuss the eScholar CEP Manager. For eScholar CEP Manager to accurately determine identified students, local CMP staff and data managers must work together. SFAs should review the eScholar conducted direct match training for end users for an overview of the direct match system. All identified students must be reported in eScholar Direct Match to automatically feed into the new CEP Manager system. Enrollment and identified students should be up to date for April 1st in eScholar. It is important that SFAs have an idea that the data will be accurate on April 1st. The CEP Manager is now open, so you can begin reviewing the data for your schools. However, it is important to remember that data will need to be refreshed after April 1st and prior to submission. SFAs are responsible for ensuring that all schools are listed, as well as the accuracy of the total enrollment and identified students percentage. All SFAs, with the exception of traditional residential child care institutes, which do not enroll any day students, must participate in this USDA reporting requirement. Both SFAs that do not intend to apply and those that may be uncertain of whether they will apply for CEP this school year must also report identified student data to the state agency at the site level no later than April 15th each year. Therefore, no later than April 15th, LEAs are responsible for submitting a list of schools to the state agency for the schools with an ISP of at least 40% who are eligible, and schools with an ISP greater than or equal to 30% but less than 40% nearly eligible, and schools in the fourth year of CEP participation with an ISP greater than or equal to 30% but less than 40%. Who are eligible for a grace year. When logging into the eScholar Direct Match, users should access the login URL linked on this screen and enter your login information. After logging into eScholar, you will need to go to the Direct Match section. To navigate there, click on Main Menu and then My Student. For assistance, please contact Jane at the email provided in the bottom right corner of the slide. The CEP Manager icon is the abacus on the navigation panel. The icon will only appear if the user has rights to the CEP Manager functions within Security Manager. CEP Manager allows the user to view, update, and certify the population data. The CEP Manager instructions can be found on the bottom of the CEP Manager page. And this is a screenshot of what the instructions would look like for any LEAs that log in. The Population tab data displays the total identified, total enrolled, district ISP trend, as well as the population and election status due dates. The locations and the pending data are listed below the summary information. Click the double arrows to see the data for the individual school. In this case, we selected school code 34570. On this page, the user can view the students by program and the student ID number. If you look at the bottom of the page, you will find the match type indicator. The green triangle indicates a manual match, and a green circle indicates a system match. The user will verify the data on this page for each program and each school. Click the arrows in the top right corner to return to the previous page. Once the data has been reviewed, the user must submit and certify the population data. Check the box next to the certification statement and click the Submit and Certify Population button. Once the data has been submitted, the state must accept the data submission. Once the state has accepted the submission, the district will see the Approved Status indicator. If you have any questions on ensuring all identified students, again, please contact Jane at the email address provided on this slide. On this slide, we have included the eScholar Direct Match contact and additional resources. As mentioned on the previous slide, you can contact Jane by email or at the phone number displayed if you need support or have a direct match questions. You can also contact the LEA Security Coordinator for new user access or to change or reset your password. Now we will talk about other CEP considerations. The CEP reimbursement rate corresponds with the poverty level of the households served by participating schools. Changes to a student population could indicate a change in the poverty level of the households served by the school and may require an ISP to be recalculated within a 4-year cycle, depending on the extent of the change and the entity involved. Please refer to Memo SP 54-2016, Community Eligibility Provision Guidance and Updated Questions and Answers for more information. Newly opened schools and/or schools new to the National School Lunch Program's School Breakfast Program will not have direct certification data from April 1st of the prior year, and instead may use direct certification data from a later month to establish CEP eligibility. If the number of identified students and total enrollment are available before the counting and claiming of meals begins, and the new school meets the eligibility requirements, either individually or as part of a group, then the LEA may elect CEP. New schools can elect CEP only if the number of identified students and enrollment are available because the ISP is the basis for claims for reimbursement. Please note The deadline for election is June 30th for all schools. SFAs or schools may elect to stop CEP at any time. This can be done by notifying the Department of Education of the decision, notifying households of the decision and allowing ample time for submission of free and reduced applications. And SFAs must offer all students reimbursable free meals for a period of at least 30 operating days following the date of restoration of standard procedures or until a new eligibility determination is made, whichever comes first. If an SFA elects to no longer apply the CEP in their system or at targeted sites within the system, the SFA must notify the state agency that they wish to not apply CEP in the following school year no later than June 30th of the current year. SFAs may not discontinue CEP once that school year has begun. What if the SFA does not have an identified student percentage of 40% or higher in year 4 of the current cycle? In this situation, the SFA may be eligible to stay on the option for an additional year, which will be considered a grace year. In order to be eligible for this grace year, the identified student percentage in year 4 of the last cycle must be between 30% and 39.99%. Please note, non-federal funds are necessary if the total amount of federal reimbursement through CEP does not fully cover the cost of serving all students meals at no charge. Carryover and transfer of eligibility. FNS encourages state agencies to implement the discretionary carryover provision to ensure that children moving from CEP to non-CEP schools continue to have access to school meals and do not experience a gap in school meal access at the beginning of the school year. Allowing LEAs to provide carryover eligibility for students transitioning from CEP schools aims to limit disruptions in providing meal benefits to low-income students and minimize the burden on the affected LEAs. Meals served to students during the carryover period are claimed at the federal free rate. For purposes of the CMPs, carryover refers to a child's eligibility from the previous school year being carried over into the current or new school year. According to 7 CFR 245.6 C2, an individual student's eligibility from the previous school year, which was defined as prior to July 1, carries over for up to 30 operating days into the new school year or until a new eligibility determination is made, whichever comes first. The 30 operating days begins on the first operating day of school. Operating days are the days on which reimbursable meals are provided by a school or another program sponsor. Carryover applies to eligibility established through a household application or through direct certification. Meals served during the carryover period are claimed at the appropriate rate depending on the individual child's eligibility status from the previous school year. Carryover allows students to continue receiving school meal benefits while families complete and submit and schools process these applications. The carryover period is not intended to delay processing of applications. Instead, schools must process applications as they are received and promptly notify households of their eligibility status. Within 10 days of receiving the application, the LEA must make a determination and notify the household of its eligibility status. And this can be found in 7 CFR 245.6 C6. While not required to issue a notification about the carryover period, school officials are encouraged to clarify for families that the carryover will end after 30 operating days. School officials should inform affected families that they must submit a new application for meal benefits to reestablish their child's eligibility before the end of the carryover period. If a student transfers within an SFA from a non-CEP school to another non-CEP school, the free or reduced eligibility must transfer with the student from the previous school. If a student transfers from a non-CEP school to a CEP school within an SFA, the student will automatically receive free meals. If a student from a CEP school to a non-CEP school within an SFA, the SFA must provide free meals for up to 10 operating days or until a new eligibility determination is made. And if a student transfers to a new SFA from a non-CEP school to another non-CEP school, the free and reduced priced eligibility may transfer from one SFA to another. If a student transfers from a non-CEP school to a CEP school in a new SFA, the student will receive free meals at the new school. And if a student moves from a CEP school into a non-CEP school in a different SFA, the school must provide free meals for 10 operating days or until a new eligibility determination is made. Federal regulations requires FSAs participating in the National School Lunch Program to ensure sufficient funds are provided to the Nonprofit School Food Service Account, the NSFSA, for meals served to students not eligible for free or reduced price meals. In SFAs that have elected to participate in CEP district-wide, paid lunch equity is not applicable. In districts that have some CEP schools and some non-CEP schools, the CEP schools are excluded from the paid lunch equity calculation. You can reference the Community Eligibility Provision Planning and Implementation Guidance that was released in September of 2016 on page 52 for more information. So when should meal charge policies be developed? If all schools in an SFA operate a non-pricing provision, such as CEP, the SFA is not required to develop a meal charge policy, as no children will be charged for meals. If any school or schools in an SFA operates standard counting and claiming, the SFA must develop a meal charge policy. This is also referenced in Memo SFS 17-49 or SP 23-2017. While CEP schools will not complete verification, the SFA must complete the verification summary form. Income surveys. The benefit of an income survey is to provide an alternative method of determining the economic status of individual students, since CEP schools are not allowed to collect free and reduced price meal applications. School systems without meal applications may not be capturing kids that are economically disadvantaged based on income eligibility for free or reduced meals. Please note that alternate household income surveys are not school meal applications, and the costs associated with collecting household income information in CEP schools may not be charged to the nonprofit school food service account. CEP schools are subject to the same basic reporting and record-keeping requirements as schools conducting normal counting and claiming or operating under other special provisions. The state agency does assess the accuracy of an LEA's ISPs. In Louisiana, as part of the administrative review, the state agency will locate 10% or a statistically valid sample of identified student names on appropriate source documentation. Therefore, the FSFA must, at a minimum, as part of the administrative review records, maintain the following ISP data for LEAs and schools participating in CEP. You must maintain a list of all of the identified students with their ISP classification used to determine the ISP from all schools participating in CEP from each district. Must maintain documentation for the total enrollment at all CEP schools, and must maintain a sample list of students that the state agency used to verify the initial ISP and all records from the year any updates are made to the ISP. And the ISP worksheet that the LEAs use to calculate the ISPs and submit it to state agencies with appropriate documentation. In addition, this documentation must be retained for 3 years after submission of the final claim for reimbursement under that claiming percentage. This includes must maintain records used in the development of the ISP during the entire period CEP is in effect, the records for the initial approval year and all records from the year any updates are made to the ISP. A few final thoughts to keep in mind is that the success of the CEP manager heavily relies on CNP staff and data managers working together to ensure all enrolled children and identified students are up to date. Also, please remember to resubmit current students to Unique ID for ID assignment and claim the master record. Direct Match uses the master records in Unique ID to match against SNAP and TANF. The history records in Unique ID are not used in Direct Match. You must run Direct Match for both SNAP and TANF and resolve all near matches and resolve all address matches, and must ensure all DSNAP children have been added to eScholar. You want to ensure all DC extensions completed in food service software are actually entered into eScholar through manual authorization. Again, if you have any additional questions or for more information, please contact Jane at the email provided. Now we will allow a few minutes for questions. You can place your questions in the chat box below, or you can contact the LDOE Division of Nutrition Support by email at childnutritionprograms@la.gov or by phone at 225-342-9661.
Hey, this is Stephanie. Toya and I are going to tag team the questions that come in today. We have a question. Will the Medicaid students be included in the identified students? Yes. However, we have a caveat. It is only your Medicaid free file. That is the reason that we've divided out your Medicaid free and your Medicaid reduced files. Only your Medicaid free students and those extended matches will be included in your ISP. I'm glad you asked that, Carla. Because that is accurate. Medicaid students will be included, and we're hoping that it's going to be really beneficial to everyone. I know you all must have a few more questions. So please go ahead and submit them in the chat box. While you're thinking of your questions and typing them in, I will note that please this year ensure that all of your schools are listed in your population data. We found last year that some schools were missing, so it will be your responsibility to go through and ensure that each of your schools are listed and that the population data and elections data is there. You will want to start working on this now. It opened up today. But as a reminder, Toya mentioned this in the presentation, you'll have to refresh your data again prior to submission to capture any students that come in after the fact. Be mindful, April 15th, which is the deadline for population data submission, falls on a Saturday this year. That's a USDA deadline. It falls on a Saturday, so make sure you plan accordingly. So we have a question. If a school falls between 40% and 62.5% identified students, how is it determined which students pay and which students get free reimbursement since only a percentage get free? That's a great question. So when your identified student percentage falls between 40 and 62.5%, what happens is that you feed all children at the free rate. It doesn't matter what their individual status is. Every child eats for free. However, on your claim, you're only claiming your percentage. So your ISP times the 1.6 multiplier. That is the percentage you're claiming at free. All other students are claimed at the paid rate. You're not taking income from those children. All kids are eating for free, but you're going to use non-federal funds to cover that difference. That is a good question. DSTAP students are disaster SNAP. So if there has been a hurricane, a disaster in your area and families have qualified for disaster SNAP, you can manually match those. We have another question. April 1st is a Saturday. This is also true. The 1st and the 15th are Saturdays, which is kind of unfortunate how it fell this year. Should the data refresh on Friday, March 31st or Monday, April 3rd in eScholar? So basically, the data is as of April 1st, but any matches that you make as of April 1st between the dates of April 1st and April 15th can count towards your data. So you can continue trying to make those April 1 and prior matches up until April 15th. So, I mean, my recommendation would be maybe on April 14th, you want to make sure everything's good and submit then for us to review. But you can continue to refresh that data as of April 1st, but you can continue doing that until April 15th. I hope that answers your question. We will have the slides and this recording posted to our Louisiana Believe website within the next few days. We will send this over to Pennington and hopefully get this out to all of you soon. What other questions do y'all have?
Stephanie, Yvonne has a question
Okay.
about the grace year.
Okay. Grace year. I can just talk about it and hopefully I'm going to answer the question. So basically what the grace year is a terrible term. I hate that it's been titled grace year because the grace year makes it sound a lot nicer than what it is. So what a grace year means is that you've been on CEP for 4 years and you've run out of CEP. And then in your 5th year, when you go to reestablish for the next year, you can't continue your current base year because you're out of base years. And lo and behold, you no longer qualify at 40% at a 40% ISP. Now you're at 35% ISP. What the grace year allows you to do is elect in at that 35% times the multiplier. So essentially, I hate to say it this way, but you will be hemorrhaging money. So if it's 35% times 1.6, you will only be claiming, all your children will be eating free, and you will only claim 56% of those meals at the free rate. And you will be using non-federal funds to cover that remaining 44%. So it sounds a lot nicer than it is. Essentially, it would cause your district to hemorrhage a lot of money. You would have to have a lot of non-federal funding to cover the cost associated with that. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to send us an email. We have another question. Are we able to make manual changes in the CEP portion of eScholar? So your manual changes aren't going to occur in the CEP portion, the CEP manager. All those manual changes are going to occur on the direct match side. So under the direct match tab, you can go into manual authorization and you can manually assign students their eligibility. Unfortunately, you can't do that with Medicaid. Medicaid has to come in that file that we get from DCFS, but you can make other manual matches in the direct match portion of eScholar. We have one on elections. And so let me just say a note about elections. We have identified some areas that we want eScholar to enhance the elections portion of the CEP manager. So as of right now, our plan is for your elections to be done in our CNP website. And when we do our elections training next month, we will go into detail about what that's going to look like, how that's going to be done. We're going to get a download of the data, but there's really some enhancements that we want eScholar to make it more user-friendly for you. So for this year, we've made the decision to move elections into our CNP system. I will say though, that your data needs to be locked in on April 15th. We will not be able to allow additional matches to be made after that April 15th deadline. So please be diligent in getting every single match that you can in by that April 15th date. We have another question. Does Medicaid reduced count toward your ISP? Medicaid reduced does not count toward your ISP, only Medicaid free. So your Medicaid reduced counts for your meal eligibility during the school year. So your children that are on that Medicaid reduced file can eat meals during the school year at the reduced rate. However, it does not count for your ISP in terms of your CEP eligibility.
And also, Jane wants us to reiterate that you should refresh the
Yes.
CEP manager page each time you access it so that it
Yes.
will show the most updated counts.
Yes. Yes. Every time you're making changes, you would have to refresh that CEP manager. When you're making those changes in the direct match portion, you're going to have to refresh when you go to the CEP manager to see those changes reflected in your ISP. Do we have any other questions? These have all been really, really excellent questions. And of course, we are more than willing to help as you're navigating and trying to decide, what to do and what your numbers are looking like. So please reach out to us at childnutritionprograms@la.gov, and we can get you connected with someone that can help walk you through some of the questions that you have. I'm not seeing any more questions. Toya, are you seeing anything?
Oh, everything, I think you've answered. Well, I do see quite a bit of concerns about the website, the CEP manager being, I guess, being slow right now.
Okay. Okay.
So,
It may be because it was open today, and maybe there's a lot of data that's getting pulled into that CEP manager. That may be the reason. So if it's and I would also venture to say that a lot of you are logged in right now, and that can also slow it down. So maybe try it again at a different time. If you're still having issues, you can reach out and we can just ensure that there's not something else happening. Um,
I think that is all. I don't see any new ones.
okay. Well, if anybody thinks of an additional question, feel free to email us at the email address on this slide, and we'll be happy to get back with you. But we appreciate you all being here and listening to this presentation. Toya did a great job. And we hope everybody has a great afternoon.